The old station master woke because the kettle had clicked, and the kettle had clicked because someone was in the tea room who should not have been there at 11:30 on a night the line was closed. Edrin Calvera had worked the small halt at Vero Bend for 41 years, and the back room behind the tea room was where he had slept since the stroke in March, and the doctor had told him to sleep on, but the doctor had not been a station master, and Edrin opened his eyes anyway, because that was what a station master's body did when the kettle clicked at a closed hour. The snow had been heavier than the forecast had promised. The small private halt at Vero Bend served only the great quiet family's estate and the village beyond it, and the late connection had been held by the snow at the long curve. Only the tea room, by old custom, kept its door open on the snowed-in nights. Edrin Calvera's daughter had told him plainly she would not have closed it had he asked her to. He did not get up at once. He listened first. His daughter Idessa was in the tea room. He could tell that from the small, patient way the cups touched the saucers. She always set them down as if they had feelings. There was another voice too, a man's voice, quiet, low, and unaccustomed to small rooms. Edrin lay very still and listened the way a man listens when he has lived a long time in a place that strangers rarely visit. 2 pots, he heard the man say, if you would. The connection has been held an hour for the snow. I have only the 1 kettle, sir, Idessa said, but the 1 kettle can pour 2 pots if you don't mind the weight. I do not mind the weight, the man said. Edrin Calvera knew that voice. He had not heard it since the funeral 4 years back, when the great quiet family from the city had brought their old master to the village churchyard, and the new one, the son, now the head of his line, had stood at the grave with the calm of a man who had buried more than the snow could hide. Edrin had watched him across the open ground and thought the world had handed that young man a great deal too soon. He had not seen him since. Now the man was in his daughter's tea room, with the platform closed under the snow, and Idessa, who did not read the city papers, was pouring him tea as if he were any man come in from the cold. Edrin did not stand up. He did not call out. He turned his head to the half-open door of the back room, where the strip of warm yellow lamplight from the tea room lay on the floorboards like a thrown blanket, and he watched. His daughter was 24 years old, her mother 9 years dead. She had stayed at Vero Bend after her schooling because Edrin's hand had begun to shake in February, and she had said plainly that she could not bear the city without him in it. Tonight she was in her navy apron with the white piping. Her father's grey wool cardigan, much too large for her, hung over her shoulders against the draught. She was at the iron stove with her back to the back room door, and the man sat at the small corner table in his charcoal 3-piece suit, his coat folded once over the chair beside him, his hat on the bench, his gloves in his hat. He looked, Edrin thought, like a man who had been told the train would wait and had said thank you and meant it. He looked tired the way only quiet men get tired. You came down for the day, Idessa said. It was not a question. The Vero Bend halt served only the family's old land. She had carded his ticket as he came in. I did, the man said, once a year. Tomorrow is the anniversary. Mr. Calvera mentioned, she said, by which she meant her father had mentioned it some years ago, and she remembered. I am sorry. Thank you. The kettle began its slow climb back toward the boil. Idessa stood by the stove and waited the way her mother had taught her to wait, not idle, not fussing, just present. The wind moved a little against the platform door and a brief sift of snow scratched the glass. The man at the corner table did not take out a watch. He did not check a phone. He sat with the stillness Edrin had only ever seen on 3 men in his life, and 2 of those men had been priests. May I ask, the man said after a while, why you are still here? At this halt. He had said it carefully, the way a man asks when he means it and does not mean it badly. Idessa at the stove did not turn at once. Edrin saw her shoulders settle the way they did when she was choosing whether to give a true answer or a polite one. She chose the true one, she always did. It was, Edrin thought, his fault and his gift to her both. My father is recovering, sir, she said. He works the day shift again from April. I keep the night room open for the held connections and the snowed-in nights, because we are the only warm room between here and the village, and a body should be warm. She stopped. Edrin in the back room did not breathe. And the man said gently, the kettle clicked. Idessa took the kettle off the iron and set it on the tile. She moved with the small economy of a person who had done the motion 10,000 times. She did not look at the man. She looked at the tea tin in her hand. My father told me when I was very small, she said, that the worst thing in the world is to be standing on a platform that no one is waiting on. I made up my mind then. No one waits alone in my tea room, not on a snowed-in night, not even strangers. She set the tin down and reached for the pot. I'm sorry, sir, that wasn't an answer to your question, it was an answer to my own. She poured, the water hissed against the leaves. The man at the corner table did not say anything for a long time. Edrin, watching through the strip of lamplight, did not see his face move. He saw only the man's hand, which had been resting easily on the edge of the table, close once around nothing and then open again. It was not a fist. It was the gesture of a man who had reached for something out of habit, and then remembered that the thing he reached for was not there to be held. The wind moved on the door. Miss Calvera, the man said at last. He had read her name off the ticket stamp on the wall Edrin guessed, or off the small brass plate on the corner of the cash drawer. My father told me a very similar thing when I was 16. We were on the platform at Pravosel the night he died. I was alone there for 2 hours before they came for me. I have thought about that platform every day since. I have never told anyone that. I am telling you because the kettle clicked. He paused. He did not look at her either. He looked at the tea tin between them. You will forgive me, I hope. Idessa Calvera set the pot down very carefully on the iron trivet. She did not turn to him. She did not, Edrin saw, want him to see her face just then, for his sake more than her own. There is nothing to forgive, sir, she said. I am sorry no one was there. Thank you, he said. He set his hands flat on the bare wood of the corner table, the way a man sets his hands when he has finished saying a thing he had not known he would say. Idessa Calvera did not for a moment do anything at all. Then she took the second cup down from the shelf. The pot steeped. She set the milk out in the small white jug. She did not hurry. She did not, Edrin noticed, fill the silence. She had been raised by a man who had learned, in 41 years on a small platform, that some silences were the room making space for a thing to set itself down. She let it set itself down. Would you, the man said after a while in a voice that was, for the first time, not perfectly steady, would you show me how you make it, the tea, the way you did just now? Sir, I have never been taught, he said. I would like to be taught. Idessa Calvera, who had been taught by her mother and her grandmother, and by her father in the hours after her mother died, looked at the man in the charcoal suit, and her face did the small soft thing Edrin had not seen it do since the funeral last spring of the village schoolmistress. Of course, sir, she said. Come and stand by the stove, the draught is less. He stood, he left his coat on the chair and his hat on the bench. He came around the small table and stood beside her at the iron, half a step back, hands folded in front of him the way a man stands at a graveside. She showed him the tin first, the dark green tin with the gold band, her grandmother's, refilled from the village shop. She showed him the small bone spoon. She showed him how she warmed the pot with a swirl of water and tipped it out. She showed him how she counted the spoonfuls, one for each cup and one for the pot, and how she watched the second hand of the small clock on the shelf for the steeping. He listened with the attentiveness of a man being told the order of a prayer. While she showed him the spoon, her hand brushed his on the tea tin. She did not pull her hand away, she did not make anything of it. She moved the spoon back into the tin and her fingers rested for one breath against his, and then the breath was over and she lifted the pot to pour. It was not a thing, it was less than a thing. Edrin in the back room watched the man's face as the woman's hand touched his by accident, and saw the small still mountain of him shift 1 inch and then settle. He did not speak, she did not speak. She poured, he took the cup from her with both hands, the way a man takes a thing he intends to remember. They drank standing at the iron because the draught was less there. He did not, Edrin saw from the back room, look like a man who had drunk a great many cups of tea standing at a stove beside a woman who had nothing to ask of him and nothing to fear of him. He looked like a man who had walked back into a room he had stood in once when he was 16 and found it warm. The platform bell far down the track rang once for the held connection. He did not move toward his coat. He drank the cup down. He set it on the iron and did not ask for another and did not refuse one. He looked at her, she looked at him. Neither of them said anything for a long while. Then she reached for the small ticket book on the counter, lifted the cancelled stamp and stamped a blank ticket for the held train. She folded it once small. She slid it into the breast pocket of his coat where it hung over the chair. For the connection, she said, on the house so that the night is on record. He looked at his coat where her hand had been. He looked at her. Thank you, Miss Calvera. Idessa. Idessa, he said. He tried the name. It sat plainly on his tongue. Domiron, he said, if you are giving names. Domiron, she said. He went for his coat. He took it down from the chair without disturbing the ticket she had slipped in. He put on his hat. He took up his gloves. He paused at the chair the way a man pauses when he is leaving a room he is not used to wanting to stay in. Idessa, at the iron, slipped her father's grey wool cardigan from her own shoulders and held it out to him. "The draught at the door is cruel," she said. "It is my father's, bring it back when you can." He took it with the care of a man handed a thing of value and walked to the platform door. There he paused, his hand on the iron pull, and did the thing Edrin had not seen any man like him do in 41 years. He turned half back to the small corner table where his cup still sat, inclined his head a half-inch to the room, not to her, not to Edrin, to the room, and said very quietly, "Thank you for keeping it warm." "Good night, Mr. Saldori," Idessa said. She did not, Edrin noted from the back room, say it as a farewell. She said it the way a stationmaster says it to a man whose train has been held and whose name she now knows, as a thing one says to keep a door open. The platform door closed behind him with the soft sound of a door that has been hung well. The wind took the snow against the glass. Idessa stood at the stove for 1 minute longer with her hand on the iron, and Edrin watched her shoulders set themselves the way they had set themselves at her mother's grave, and then she shook herself and washed the 2 cups in the small enamel basin and put them away, and never once looked at the back room door. Edrin Calvera closed his eyes and pretended to sleep. He did not in fact sleep for a long time. He had seen, in 41 years on the small platform, 3 men he would remember to his last hour. 2 were dead. The third was the man who had just gone out into the snow with a cancelled ticket in his pocket and a daughter's accidental hand still warm on his. In the morning he said nothing of it. Idessa made him porridge at the iron stove and warmed his hands between her own and did not, by any small turn of her face, suggest that anything had happened in the tea-room the night before. Edrin Calvera had been her father long enough to know that some news a daughter keeps for herself until the world has shown her whether it was a thing or not a thing. He did not mention the cancelled ticket she had stamped, or the small green tea tin she had moved 1 inch to the left on the shelf, where it caught the lamp better. A month later, on the next Snowdon Tuesday, Edrin woke again to the kettle. He listened. The voice at the corner table was the same, quiet, low. The man had laid the wool cardigan, folded as it had left the tea-room, on the chair where his coat had hung the month before, and his hand had rested flat on the wool for a second before he straightened. He had a small brown paper parcel under his other arm. He set it on the iron beside the tea tin and told Idessa, in the careful way a man tells a woman a thing he has been carrying for a month, that the tin had belonged to his late mother, that it came from a particular old maker whose stamp was on the bottom, that he had remembered her saying she would teach a man how to make tea if he came in from the snow asking properly, and that he had come back on the next snowed-in night, asking. He did not, Edrin noted, ask anything else of her. He set the tin down, he waited. Idessa took the tin in both hands. She turned it once so the maker's stamp caught the light. She opened the lid, she breathed in, she closed it again. She set it on the shelf 1 inch to the left of the green one where it caught the lamp better, and then she turned to him and said plainly the way she always said true things, "You may come on the cold night's damiron. As long as the kettle clicks, there is a chair." He did not, Edrin saw from the half-open door, smile the way a man smiles when he has won something. He nodded the way a man nods when he has, against all his expectation, been kept. The kettle, on cue, began its slow climb back toward the boil. Idessa reached for the spoon and showed him again how she warmed the pot. He watched her hands. Edrin Calvera closed the back room door 1 inch further, so that only the warm strip of yellow lamplight remained on the floorboards, and he slept that night the deep sleep of a stationmaster whose daughter has been seen by a man who knew how to wait, on a platform no one had been waiting on for a very long time.